Welcome to the Green Wasp Removal YouTube channel. We wish you and yours a happy new year as we bring you our first episode of 2025. This is part one of a special two-part episode featuring a massive German Yellowjacket wasp colony located under the backyard deck of a private residence. The property owners had been stung multiple times due to the huge population of forager wasps swarming around their deck area, so they called us for help, and we responded over the course of several visits during September and October of 2024. The nest was deep inside the wooden foundational structure of this residence in an inaccessible area, so we arranged an Attrition Collection to capture thousands of flying Yellowjackets for use in Venom Immunotherapy, or VIT. It was a very productive nest, and we were glad to put these wasps to good use as they will ultimately help improve and even save the lives of venom allergy patients around the world. Here in part one, we'll show you the first two collection days as we first respond to the property and assess the nest, and then we continue training and mentoring the Manchester University Wasp Survey team as some of our new trainees take on this nest while learning how wasp venom collection works. The team did a great job, and we'll show you the entire process, from the initial arrival and species identification to collection of thousands of flying adult forager wasps, to the freezing of wasp specimens in dry ice to preserve their venom for medical use, to utilizing the scope camera to get unique video footage from deep inside the wasp nest. We'll also discuss the ergonomics and psychology of the job we do and how we operate in the field to ensure safe and healthy work practices for our field operators as they work hard collecting wasp venom for the biomedical industry. The team we work with is just so solid and so motivated and so willing to learn that we want to make sure we take care of them and teach them the best techniques we can possibly teach them to do this work well. And we're so glad to have all our YouTube viewers riding along with us during this entire learning process. We hope you get as much out of this as we do as we present it for you. We've had a really good time throughout 2024, and we expect to have another fun year in 2025, and we're so glad to have you with us. Thanks again for being here. Enjoy the show. September 26th, 2024. We have a private residence here with two different wasp nests. One's right here at the back wall underneath this deck. Right there you see a light colored space, a hole where there's a utility line running through. And that one's got a very active Yellowjacket nest. And then down here in one of the flower beds down this way, we've got a ground nest of Yellowjackets. So they've got two nests here. First one we're going to set up and deal with is over here. So we're going to lay out a tarp on the dirt, and we're going to climb under there with a vac and just start doing an attrition collection to knock down that population, which is very, very busy. In the meantime, we're going to do a species ID to find out what we're dealing with, which species. So first thing we got to do here is climb under and get the tarp laid down. All right, let's take you in there. So we got two very active entrances here. This is the kind of job that'll be very close proximity with thousands of wasps. Looks like Vespula germanica, which is German Yellowjacket. Just a quick note on voiceover here. The reason we know this is a German Yellowjacket is because of the pattern on the back of the wasp. Look for the small arrowhead-shaped pattern you see in the very first turga just below the head, where the body connects to the head. That shows that this is German Yellowjacket. That's what we're looking for. The black dots against the yellow background and a couple other features, that's how we identify them. And this is just a quick field identification that's right most of the time. It actually takes some genetic microscopic work to really be 100%, but for the purposes of most of what we do, this method works just fine. They've chewed away quite a bit of the space here. The wood, foam, insulation, it's all chewed out. Busy little beavers. So we're setting up here for an attrition collection. And what that means is basically the nest is in a place inside the structure that we cannot reach and that it's not worth cutting out of, or it would be too damaging to the building to cut the nest out. So we set up for just collecting the wasps that are flying in and out of the nest. And that's what you see happening here. This process always requires multiple visits, which is fine. The client is perfectly happy to have us reduce the population of wasps at that property so they're not bothering the client. And we can collect as many as we can capture for Venom Immunotherapy. Our clients are people who really appreciate green removals. No poisons, no toxins left in their living space or their property, and their wasps go away because they're used for biomedical purposes and everybody wins. It's a really good arrangement. So here during the initial collection, you can see there's just tons and tons of activity. These wasps are not coming out to attack. They are simply foraging. This is the routine amount of traffic that comes and goes from this nest all day, every day. And if we freeze the frame here for you for just a second and blow it up, you can really see some of the prey that they're bringing back. These are other insects that they collect in the wild. Some of them are larger or as large as their own body size. So in this way, wasps are super important predators. A tremendous number of pest insects are being taken out of the local ecosystem while they bring this food back to the nest. And that's their main job. Yellowjackets in the ecosystem are so important because this is exactly what they do all day long. They bring pest insects back and they feed them to their larvae. So all that protein that the larva needs is really made up of pest insects that would otherwise have been bothering this property all season. So it's great to have yellowjackets on your property. Whenever you find an active yellowjacket nest on your property, you want to do your best to just leave it alone and let it do what it does, which is go after all those pest insects for you. However, if they're in a place like this where they're actually chewing up the structure you're trying to live in, and there's just too many of them anyway, and they cause problems with sting risk for people trying to lay out on the deck on top of this structure, they have to go. So there are times when they just have to be removed, and that's when you can call us and we'll do a green removal for you. One of the things you may notice as you look at this footage is that the wasps crawling out of the entrance, many of them have something in their mandibles, something in their mouths. They are bringing something out of the nest. What that is usually is digging. They're digging out and chewing out more space. So they're pulling out all sorts of stuff from insulation to building materials and foam and whatever might be in there, wood, whatever they need to get through to expand their nest. They're going to chew it up and bring it out of the nest while they're bringing in a lot of food to feed the larvae and building material to expand the nest. So there's kind of a constant traffic flow of material coming out and material going in. This is why if you have a wasp colony inside a structure, you typically want to get it out if you can. Wasps will typically build their nests out of wood products, so they'll go out and they'll collect wood fiber from fences and telephone poles and dead logs and all sorts of places, plant material as well. And they chew this material up and mix it with their saliva, and they create kind of a paper mache out of that material. And that's what they make the combs that they put their babies in, and that's what they cover the combs with paper. That paper is made out of that material as well. So it's really basically a wooden structure, just like paper that we write on. They create a paper very similar to that. It ends up looking and feeling kind of like a Chinese lantern. That's what Yellowjackets create. It's a pretty amazing process. Here we slow the footage down for you a little bit so you can see a little bit more in detail what their food delivery looks like. You see wasps flying back to the nest, trying to land with their large pieces of insect meat that they have in their mandibles. And this is insect meat that they have hunted in the wild. It's all fresh, and they bring it back and they immediately start to malaxate it or chew it up, and they will then feed it directly to the larvae, the baby wasps in the nest. And you see the other foragers just pouring out of that hole in the wood. And these are going out to hunt or out to collect building materials or nectar or whatever they need to survive in the nest. And they just do this all day long, back and forth, back and forth. And you're going to find, if you watch any wasp nest activity for any length of time, you can't help but be amazed by the amount of energy that is pouring in and out of this nest. The energy it takes to support thousands and thousands of Yellowjackets. And this nest was huge. This is a very active, very busy nest that requires a tremendous amount of energy to grow and to live. If you watch a nest begin from the very beginning of the season, where there's just a queen, one queen does all this work, building the nest, foraging for food, feeding the babies, laying eggs, all of it's one queen. Eventually the first round of female workers is born, and then they take over most of the foraging duties, and the queen stays on the nest and just lays eggs. Every wasp you see here comes from an egg laid by a single queen. And that's pretty amazing, how one queen, one insect, can create thousands and thousands and thousands of offspring. As we pull back a little bit and you see where their flight patterns are, they were coming in from the side, they were coming in from the back of the patio and deck, they were coming in from all over the place, just constantly foraging. This was clearly a huge nest, very mature nest, and very active. By the time we were called, the clients had already been stung a couple of times on their deck from all of these foragers, and it was just getting out of hand, so it was time to get this dealt with. They had no idea exactly where the nest was or the size of it. The client also had no idea how much damage had happened underneath their deck. So it's often our job to let the client understand the nature of the problem. They didn't realize all of this material was missing from this part of their under deck. It looked like there had been a significant amount of animal activity down here from mammals, probably rodents or something chewing away the wood down here, and they had no idea that that had happened. And of course that just made it easier for the wasps. So between the animal damage and the insect damage that the wasps were doing to build their nest, there was some serious structural issues that had to be redone here. Once we were done with this job, we recommended that they reapply a whole new layer of wood down here. Once the wood structure is rebuilt, of course, then you'd have to seal up all of the holes where any wasp could fit in during the springtime. Any queen looking for a place to live, you want to fill all those holes, cracks, everything you can find with expandable foam or what have you. The key to preventing this type of problem is always going to be simply sealing up your structure. As long as you get that done prior to springtime when the new queens come out looking for somewhere to live, you'll be fine. By the way, the tube-shaped structures on the wall back there are mud wasp nests. Those are solitary wasps. They don't make big colonies, and they're not related to these Yellowjackets. And mud wasps are native to North America. They're a really good species to have around, all of them, and they control spiders typically. It's what they feed their young. So here we're going to share a few more minutes of slow motion footage. You can just watch how these wasps live, how they come and go, and what that looks like. For those of you interested in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment of a wasp's existence, it is pretty amazing to look at. If you prefer to move ahead, just go ahead and move forward on the timeline. But for those of you interested in sticking around and watching the wasps, we'll just drop in a little music track here and let you relax and kick back. We've got the collection going just fine. Now it's just a matter of attrition, collecting them as they come in and as they leave. So a note here about ergonomics. As you watch this collection happening, you'll notice that we're in a very tight space. Underneath this deck was very uncomfortable. We're laying on dirt and rocks, and that's why we lay down the tarp, number one. Then we have pads that are mobile pads. We move them all around wherever we need them, for knees or for backs or hips or wherever we're laying down on something hard. We can slip it underneath our body, and those pads are what I'm laying on here. And oftentimes we have to just simply lay back and get into that Zen state where we just relax and let the work go. So I'm just laying back here like an astronaut about to blast off. A lot of the ergonomic side of the job is super important because we're in awkward spaces, we're holding awkward poses physically, and that is just going to damage your body over time. So you have to find ways to relax and mitigate that. A lot of this job is kind of like a Zen state you have to get into and just relax in the midst of chaos. From a safety standpoint, we can't rush through anything that we do in this work. Almost all the places we work have multiple things that can tear up our veils and suits and immediately expose us to thousands of stinging insects. The workflow has to be calm, focused, and methodical every time. And that just takes practice and experience, and to some degree, a certain personality type. I might just have to take a little nappy here. We joke about napping here in the midst of all this chaos and thousands of stinging insects trying to kill you while you're working, but realistically, we do have to be careful if we relax too much, because we have hearing protection on. We're kind of in our own little world, and like any job where you have to pay very close attention to what you're doing for safety of your own crew, safety of the folks around you, around the work site, you got to be really on it all the time. So as you see in this clip, ergonomically, the most sensible position was just flat on the back, and then slightly adjusting the vacuum device as needed throughout a very long-term attrition collection. And you really have to focus, because every time things change, you have to adjust to that change. One of the things we have to monitor very carefully is the condition of the wasps that are in the collection bottle. They can overheat very quickly and suddenly. They can run out of oxygen if too many of them get in there at once. There's many things that we have to watch to make sure that the wasps are viable at the end of this collection. Otherwise, all our efforts could go to waste if we don't pay very close attention. Viewers may wonder why, if we see two entrances here, why are we not using two vacuums? Well, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. In this case, we were observing, in the initial collection anyway, the first day we went out here, just looking at the traffic. What's it naturally doing? What's going to be the most viable place to collect from? And it ended up being this round hole, this utility hole that was not being used, that was cut into the wood. This was the spot that seemed to be the main highway for most of the traffic. Eventually, as you'll see later in the video, we did in fact close up that second entrance just so we could focus on this one entrance and force all the traffic closer to our one collection device. But on this initial day, we just observed mostly and collected from one side. And you'll notice that our collection device never gets every wasp coming and going. It'll get some coming, it'll get some going, it'll miss some in both directions, and that's normal. We just allow that to happen because eventually they're going to get collected. So if we don't get that particular wasp on its way in or way out the first time, we'll get it the second time or the third time around, and it's just a constant flow of traffic, so our bottles fill up regardless. And it's interesting, you can see a little easier when the footage is slowed down how the wasps try to navigate around this object they have now found in front of their front door. They do assess the situation. It's not like they blindly go in not looking at all. They assess it, they attempt to figure out what it is, sometimes even land on it, try to sting it, try to feel it out. Regardless, they, by instinct, must get back to their nest. They are driven to get back to the nest through that entry hole. So even if it looks suicidal, they're going to eventually try to get back into that hole. And when they do, we get them. The collection's going great. Very steady flow of hundreds and hundreds of wasps. And German Yellowjackets, which you see here, are Vespula germanica, that's German Yellowjackets. They're some of the easiest to work with in this business because they are not super aggressive. They simply don't act like Southern Yellowjackets or Eastern Yellowjackets, that's Maculifrons or Squamosa. Those species are very aggressive and they'll continually keep attacking the operator, the field operator. Whereas Germanica, they'll hover around the field operator, maybe feel them out, maybe try to sting every once in a while, but for the most part, they just hover around and then go right back to the nest. They're not big attackers. That said, you still need to suit up and be very, very careful because they do have some of the biggest populations of nest size that we deal with. So no matter how they compare to other wasps, they're still wasps. And so they can be as dangerous as any other wasp in certain conditions, especially if you have venom sensitivity. Here we're going to show you what's on the other side of that wall that we're working on in the crawl space. So right where that gray pipe goes into the wall, that's where our nest is, right there. You can see them coming out of there. So right above that gray pipe, you can see a dark space, a hole in what is the ceiling of the crawl space. And this is actually the lowest part of the floor above us. Coming right to the light. As soon as we opened the crawl space hatch and shined our light in there, the wasp started bombing out toward the light. But it's up in the ceiling here, or the floor joist bays, so it's not accessible from down here any more than it is from out underneath the deck. So at this point in the collection, as you can see, the bottle was starting to fill up. So it was about time to change this bottle out. We have to be very careful not to overpopulate any particular collection bottle, or they can run out of oxygen all of a sudden and kill the whole lot. And when you're working with a nest this size with this big of a population, you're going to go through several collection bottles. Here we're going to give you the wasp eyes view of what it's like inside the collection bottle. Kind of a huge mosh pit in there. So now we're going to rig our second bottle and we'll continue the collection, which is still very active here, coming and going. So next bottle is up. First bottle's back in the truck freezing in the dry ice. So we'll continue from here. All right, we're hooked up with the second bottle. Now it's time for the next collection. We taped over this side to force them toward the vacuum hole. This forces them toward our vacuum hose, which speeds up the collection. You'll see as we slow down the footage here, when the wasps come back and you've altered one of their entrances, they are very confused and it takes them a little while to reorient. So what you see here is orientation behavior. They're coming back, they realize something has changed, and they have to reorient to find out an alternate route to the nest. And that alternate route, of course, is going to be the hole where we have our vacuum set up. Now they're trying to bring their food back to where they were before, and they're unable to get in, and it takes them a little bit of feeling around. They have to bump into this tape for a while. They check it out with their antennas, which give them a lot of input. So in regular speed, it looks kind of chaotic, like they're just clumsily bouncing into the tape. But in fact, what they're doing is they're very intentionally bumping gently into the tape, feeling it with their antennas to get all that sensory input, and then they're finding alternate routes to the nest. It's all very planned out in their mind. They come up, they check it out, they see what's going on, and they make their decision based on that input. And that decision-making process is really clear and obvious when you slow down the footage like this. But if the human eye tries to watch all this in regular speed, the actual speed that wasps fly, which is super fast, our eyes and our brains are just simply too slow to track what's happening. You have to slow it down to really study it. It's actually really interesting to watch wasps in flight when they do anything, because their flight patterns are so clearly thought out and intentional. But at high speeds, at regular speeds, they look super chaotic. We're going to show you a few seconds of regular speed here, and then you'll see it suddenly slow down to slow motion again. It's quite a difference. So we're going to show you a couple more minutes here in slow-mo, and then we'll show you a few minutes in regular speed. It's pretty striking. And coming up, we'll show you how we freeze this second bottle in dry ice. That's frozen CO2. This preserves the wasp specimens for venom immunotherapy purposes. And then we'll move on into the second half of this episode, where we bring in the Manchester University Wasp Survey team, and we train some of our newer trainees on this site. We came back on a different date with the team to do this initial training, so we'll show you all that later in this episode. First, we'll show you a couple of minutes of regular speed footage so you can compare it to the slow-mo footage. As you'll see, wasps are much harder to study at actual speed. It's much harder to track the detail of what they're carrying and what they're doing and watching their behavior at regular speed. That's why we do a lot of slow-mo lately on this channel, so you can better appreciate what the wasps are actually doing. Now, what you might notice here in this last couple minutes of footage for this first half hour is that the exit traffic, the wasps coming out of the exit hole, has reduced significantly from when we first arrived. And that's how we know we're about to begin winding down the collection here. We do hook up a third bottle here shortly, and we'll show you what that looks like. But for sure, there's less traffic coming out now. So normally when we begin to get to the point where most of the traffic is inbound, that's how we know that most of the foragers in the nests that are capable of coming out have already come out. And we'll wrap it up from that point pretty soon, and we'll come back on another day. This allows some of the pupae in the nest to hatch out, and those workers will be active when we come back again. So we're going to take this next batch and put it into dry ice. So now we're bringing our third bottle into the underdeck nest. All right, here's bottle number 3. So as you can see here, by the time we got to the third bottle on this collection day, most of the traffic we were collecting was inbound, meaning all of the foragers that were capable of flying and going outside the nest to forage were already out and were on their way back in. So because this nest was starting to slow down, it was a good time to go and check on the other nest, the ground nest that we mentioned earlier in the video. It was a different species. It was Eastern Yellowjacket, Vespular maculiferans, much smaller nest. So we'll give you a look here at what it looked like when we stepped away to check on the ground nest collection. This one's much slower than the Germanica. So what you see in this collection bottle is actually a different species of yellowjacket that was living under the ground in one of the flower beds at this property. This is Vespular maculiferans, or Eastern Yellowjacket. This is a very aggressive species. This would be the type of wasp that would be all over our veil, all over our suits, constantly trying to attack us if it was a very busy, active nest, but it was not. So there wasn't much action at this nest. The ground nest must have been quite small or mostly hatched out for the season, whichever it was. In the same amount of time we were getting 2 or 3 bottles of Germanica, we only collected a handful of Eastern Yellowjackets. So at the end of this collection day, we had thousands of Vespular Germanica, frozen solid, as you see here, by the CO2, which is frozen dry ice. It just knocks out the wasp instantly, flash freezes them, and then we take them from the collection bottles, dump them out into a tray, and then we move them into baggies marked with species and date when they were collected, and we put them into the chest freezer from there for the whole season. At the end of the season, we then ship them all out to the labs that will use them for Venom Immunotherapy. For now, let's jump forward in time to October 2nd, 2024, when the Manchester University Wasp survey team arrived to do the second part of this collection. October 2nd, 2024, we're in a private residence that has 2 wasp nests today. Over here underneath the deck, we have a German Yellowjacket nest we've been starting the other day. We're going to do another attrition collection on that one with this blue vac you see. And over here, we have a ground nest today, which has not been terribly active since we went ahead and collected quite a few of them the other day from here. So we'll maybe dig this one out today. And today we have the help of the Manchester University Wasp Survey team. We have Elise, and we have Coco, and we have Lucy today. So thanks for coming, guys. This is going to be your first nest experience, right?
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming out. It's going to be fun. All right, let's get loaded up and we'll get suited up and we'll go from there. Do some safety checks. Elise, your team lead today, so you guys walk through the safety protocols and we'll get moving. So we have a team leader protocol on this team, and that means the most experienced team leader walks the rest of the team through the safety protocols to get into our suits and be safe. And so we'll check seams and veils and zippers. And Elise is our team lead today, and she'll take Coco and Lucy, who are new to the team, through that protocol. So as you get suited up, you'll notice that the whole team has long pants on and often long sleeves, and that sort of thing is done on purpose because it puts more material between the stinger and your body. And so the more material you have and the more loose and baggy the clothing are, the better you are prepared to deal with wasps. Luckily today we're dealing with Vespula germanica, and of course that is one of the least aggressive species, so that's a good thing, makes it a little easier to work with them. But the team is always prepared with relatively thick, loose-fitting clothing underneath their bee suits most of the time. And that's the best way to operate. It's just best practice in the field. And it's always best when you're out in the field to have taller shoes. Most of us have some type of boot sort of arrangement. I've got real tall leather boots on. I always keep it half calf at the lowest, and that just makes it easier. But this sort of shoe works great as well. As long as your ankles are covered, that typically is the best type of footwear to use and when you're doing removals. Any of the points on the suit that take the most stress, that's what we check. So we're looking at all these seams in the limbs, and we're looking at the zippers, we're looking at the veils. Let's make sure there's no holes in anybody's veils. All right.
Like here, all
Yep, just make sure everything looks solid. Like if there's anywhere you think a wasp can get in, just alert her to it and we'll talk about it.
look good to me.
All right, good to go.
So you're going to want to put these things over your thumb, or if that's not tight enough, you can do like this instead. Either one is fine.
So the sleeve doesn't get lost and then like fall down.
That's right, you want to put it over your sleeve.
And then it goes over the sleeve, yep.
What they're doing now is they're going to go ahead and lay down the tarp underneath the deck. What they're going to do is spread it all the way out so that we don't have to work in a muddy environment or lay on dirt. We just want to try to make this as simple and clean as possible. So they're going through using knee pads as they move along. Ergonomically, you always want to have knee pads and be able to get in and lay down anything you need to do for prep that will help ergonomics or that will help cleanliness during the job. And that's the purpose for this sort of work. Let me move this cord out of the way for you. There you go, good job. Lay it all the way out flat. If there's any huge rocks that you can move them if you like, whatever is easiest. Watch your knees as you're moving around because some of the rocks might be sharp. You just want to be careful not to hurt yourself. That looks pretty good. So let's come on out once you get yourself settled with that tarp, and we'll set up the bottle and we'll show you how to rig the bottle to the bee bag.
We'll just leave them in here for us to...
Yeah, they're great for when you need to lay down and just relax while you're doing collecting. They're helpful for hips and knees and whatever you need.
Okay, we're going out.
All right, watch your heads and backs coming out when you're working in an environment like this. You don't want to snag anything. You're looking for nails or anything sharp, anything that could rip your veil, that kind of thing. So just be slow and careful as you move, watching everything as you go. I'm gonna go grab a collection bottle and we'll walk through how we do that. So when we pick out collection bottles, we're always picking out the ones that are marked with the species we're gonna work with. This is marked with Vespula germanica. You can't see it very well, but it is marked. We keep them all separated in specific containers just for that species. That way we don't get cross-contamination when we're collecting for venom.
I got it. There we go.
And you won't need much tape, just enough to close the air gaps between the two hoses. Yeah, right here.
Connected.
Just a little bit to wrap around. Once it's closed up, you can snug it up, but you won't need a whole lot.
That's pretty good.
Just there?
Yep.
There you go.
I want to use as little duct tape as possible.
Yeah, that's always the best practice, just to save on gear cost. All right, if you feel like you're pretty good there, then we add a hose to the top that is kind of a spout that makes it a little easier because it's curved. And I'll get that. The angled hose gives you a little bit easier setup, and you'll see why when you get it up next to a wall.
It's pretty snuggly, so we don't.
Yeah, we typically don't tape that one because it's good to go. So, Elise, you can now kind of bring your rig into the workspace and get yourself set up into a comfortable spot. Use the pads as needed so each operator can work a little bit more comfortably. And kind of pull it up as far as you like. I've got plenty of slack for you on the extension cords, so you should be able to take it in as far as you like. And you guys can help her wrangle gear if she needs any help kind of setting up. I'll take the tape for you. Hey, Coco. I'm going to hand you this and let you film. It's rolling right now. And try not to hit the side buttons, that'll turn it on. But if you can kind of shoot those guys and what they're doing, I'll be right back after I see that.
Okay, go ahead and turn the back on.
Thank you. Hold on with you. Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Due to the noise of the vacuum, you can't hear the dialogue very well, but what Elise is explaining to the newer trainees is that wasps are attracted to the dark color of the spout on the collection bottle, and they're also attracted to the dark holes anywhere near the nest hole they're used to entering. So they will explore the spout just because they're interested in the dark hole of the spout, and they'll be collected that way. So as Coco was filming here, you could see quite a number of the wasps that were entering the nest, bringing back food. This is pest insects they hunt in the wild. You can see that food dangling from their mandibles. These are insects and parts of insects. Here you see a wasp coming back with what looks like kind of a small worm in its mouth, and it will feed these directly to the larvae, the baby wasps inside the nest. And you can see where Elise, our team lead on this job, positioned the collection bottle. It's adjacent to the main entry hole of the nest. And the reason it doesn't cover that hole is because if you cover the hole, the wasps cannot visually orient and figure out how to get back to their nest. they need to see the hole in order to get back home. And that's when we collect them, is when they're coming in or out of that hole. So you never want to cover that all the way. You always want to be somewhat adjacent to it, and that's exactly where Elise set it up. And as you can see, the bottle's beginning to fill up quickly. She did a good job positioning that. And you'll notice as you watch this footage, this is on October 2nd. This is several days after we came out there the first time on the 26th of September. And you'll find that there's a whole new crop of outbound foragers. That's the pupae in the nest that had still been in the larval stage or the pupae stage when we left the last time, has now hatched out a whole new brood of foraging workers. And those are what we're collecting on this round. So you can see how fast a wasp nest can regenerate its population week to week. Even though you do an attrition collection 1 week, the next week or two you're going to see a whole nother crop come up, and you're going to want to collect all of those. And that's how you keep the population under control for the client, and that's how you continually gather more and more wasps for the ultimate use in venom immunotherapy. The more we get, the more we can use for venom immunotherapy. So these attrition collections are great that way. It's kind of like incubating the nest. You simply let it happen naturally instead of in captivity. So we'll speed this shot up for you just a little bit, but just keep an eye on how many wasps are coming in and out of here every minute. It's pretty amazing the population has already gotten this size in just a week or so. This is why when we do attrition collections for clients, we tell them we'll be back, every couple of days, every week or so, to continually do this, because if we don't, the population will explode out of control again, just like before we got there the first time. But we do love collecting at nests like this because we don't have to do any digging, no cutting, no mess. We simply collect from the outside.
All right, we're going to do a little interview. So, Coco and Lucy, tell me about your first experience wasping so far.
It's been really good, really cool, and way more chill than I was expecting.
Great.
I'm really happy I'm doing this because it's really cool, and I'm happy that everyone's making sure that we're safe and doing good, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, Elise, you've been a veteran on this team for a while. How do you feel about being team leader?
Pretty comfortable. I feel like this isn't my first rodeo.
That's true.
I feel like at this point I should know what I'm doing.
That's it. Elise is now capable of training team members, which is fantastic. So you guys are now going to be veteran wasp collectors and veteran venom collectors. Very few people in the world can claim that. So good job. We have a good collection going already. You can see how many wasps are already in the collection bottle. Vespula germanica, they have one of the largest populations of all of the species that we deal with. So that's very important because as we do collection, we know there's going to be thousands of wasps we need to deal with. So typically on attrition collections like this, you have to come back multiple times. And you have to be patient enough to do that without poison, with no toxins, and in a way that is green and good for the ecosystem. And that's what we do here. Looks like you have it positioned very well, because you're getting a lot of them pretty quickly. You can see how many foragers are coming and going. Very busy nest. I probably took almost 3,000 out of here the other day. And we'll probably get at least 1,000 plus today. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that Elise, the team lead, one of the Manchester University students on the team, is able to train the others as they get used to this work.
Anyway, they'll hatch out the nest, and then they'll select the new wasps, and then he'll send those wasps through the IP. So basically, he's getting as many as he possibly can out of the nest.
So we found some mud wasps in here. We're just examining the mud wasps. These are always very beneficial. And we're kind of letting the team understand what these wasps are. So there's cells inside the mud, and the cells have live spiders in them that are paralyzed to feed the larvae. They're great controllers in the environment so spiders don't overpopulate. And there's a lot of mud wasp nests here underneath. We took a few down just to check them out.
The baby wasps do. They will, yeah. When they hatch out.
This one's crazy.
The movie Alien, the horror film Alien, was based on parasitic wasps.
That makes sense. When I was in second grade, we had where you dress up like what you want to be, career day at school, and you show up what you want to be as. And I came as an exterminator, so this is probably the closest I'll get to being an exterminator, but kind of living my dream.
That is awesome.
Yeah, true.
And in this type of work, you're removing them from the ecosystem in a healthy way that also helps people. So they go to a good cause. Since we do have to kill them, at least they go to a good cause. That looks great. Everything's moving and everything looks so very active, and that's what we want. When they start to slow down, or if they look stressed, you got to get them frozen.
I'm going to move the nozzle a little bit so that it's closer.
Don't hurt your hand. Not much happening.
They're all sitting right in there.
No, it's okay. They'll come out eventually because by instinct they have to. They'll keep trying to sneak out, and when they come back, we'll get them. I love how they all gather around the hole and just look at you. They're like, what are you doing in my house?
You want to come over here so you can see?
If you look at their mandibles, their mouth parts, a lot of them are carrying in meat, insect meat, that they hunted in the wild. So if you watch them, try to see that. So you feel like it's collecting them okay? You can experiment with where you put the hose. Sometimes
I can put it back to where we had it earlier. I think it was doing a bit better.
yeah,
to the side like this, and then it was like
There you go.
right up there.
You always want to experiment with it as you're working it to figure out what gives you the best collection.
They're very strong. And as long as they're like, they really only get sucked up if they're flying past. If they're crawling and if they're like crawling on the wood or a surface, they won't get sucked up because they're very strong.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to interrupt their flight path somewhere along the line, going out or coming in, right?
There's a really tiny hole. I don't think I can fit through it.
That's okay. What are you seeing? We're using the scope camera through the hole in the wall to see if we can locate where the nest is.
Whoa.
Turn it around just a little bit. Try to shoot it. There you go. Looks like you're in the nest. That looks like paper to me.
Yeah.
So that's wasp paper. Yeah, it's busy back there. See if you can punch through any of that paper. That's good. That stirs them up. If you don't have good focus, just pull back a little bit. So that's good. We'll let them get sucked up now. So we just stirred them up pretty good, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that's a good thing because the more you stir them up, the more you can collect them. If they're all camped out in there, you have to do something to get them to come out. So you'll see how they come out and check us out, and they'll visually orient on what the threat is. And then if we're just sitting here, we're not attacking them, they go back to the nest. And as soon as they do that, we collect them.
I got a little nerdy. They were all over my gloves.
Yeah, I use 2 pairs of gloves whenever I'm doing hands-on work next to a nest because they can sting through a glove sometimes, especially if it gets wet. So just make sure the bail's off your face. Whenever you're in a swarm environment, that's all you need to do. So you see how they eventually just start going right back to the nest.
We have to do like a business project.
All right, how's it looking?
Great.
You still moving okay in there?
Yeah.
All right, good. Let's say it's about 4:40 right now. Give me about another 5 minutes, and we'll take these guys through the freezing process. Because I brought the ice, it's in the truck.
Okay.
Okay? All right, let's go ahead and cap off. Whoever's got the cap, hand it over to Elise, and she'll cap it off. All right, looks great. So if you want to pull that bottle and hand it to me, I'll get the ice ready, and then we'll take these guys through the ice process.
I gotta get
All right, good job. Let's see what you got there. That is a great collection of Vespula germanica, our German Yellowjackets, an invasive species from overseas. Got here in the roughly about the late 70s, over on the East Coast through shipping channels and things that came over from Europe, Eurasia. Good job, everybody. How'd you do on your first experience? Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah,
Super
that's super
cool.
cool.
Well, you did a great job. All of you, let's line you up right here. This is a traditional thing we do at the end of every job, is we just take an image of what was collected for the day. All right, so October 2nd, 2024, and Elise and Lucy and Coco just took out a very large collection of Vespula germanica wasps. So we're going to take them through the freezing process now, which is how we preserve the venom for venom immunotherapy. It's a field flash freeze done with CO2, frozen dry ice. So we'll take you through that process now. So what we're going to do now is freeze our live specimens. What you see here is a whole bunch of female worker germanica. That's Vespula germanica. Very active, excellent for venom immunotherapy because they all have venom sacs, and those venom sacs are what are harvested for venom immunotherapy collection. So Coco and Lucy are going to take our wasps, and Lucy's going to put them into the dry ice, and Coco is going to take this container, two hands like this, from over here, and just bury them in the ice. So lay it flat down in the container. Make sure it's pretty well solid there. There you go. And then you cover it completely with this dry ice. So slowly cover it from end to end with that ice. And this is what gives you a flash freeze in the field. That's why we bring it out in a cooler so that we can freeze them right away.
How should I do that?
Just like that, just dump it right in. There you go, right across till it's all gone. There you go. Cover it right up. Great. And then once you got it covered, yeah, you can drop it right in like that, that's fine. And then we'll just close it up. And then what we do is we leave it like this for about 15 minutes, and that gives them a good flash freeze. The CO2 knocks them out humanely very quickly, like in seconds, and then they freeze. So that's how it works. Any questions on that? All right, you have now been trained in freezing. Elise already went through that training. So that's it, it's a pretty simple process. The key is to have the ice on top of the wasp specimens. If you have it only on the bottom, it doesn't work as well. All the cold and the CO2 goes down. So you always want to have ice on the top. And if possible, surround it, bottom and top, but especially on top. Okay, so that's it for today. Let's wrap it up. Well, great job, guys. So that's it for part one of this episode. We appreciate you riding along with us today, as always. Stay tuned for part two of this episode, where we go back on a couple of more dates and get some really interesting slow-motion close-up footage of the wasps in action, as well as some very interesting scope cam footage from deep inside the nest itself. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us here in 2025, a brand new year. We'll still be uploading throughout the winter some more footage from 2024, and stay tuned throughout 2025 for brand new footage from the new season. For now, we wish you a happy new year. Have a good one.